In this video series, I've shown you how to take everything that MAGNUSON sends you in these vacuum sealed packages and turn it from a bunch of parts into this. It's been a long road, but everything is cataloged in this playlist that will be linked in the description box below. But enough of that. You want to finish this up? You're going to want to sit back, relax, and check this out. Okay, to start off with this video, even though this is about the electrical wiring, I wanted to show you that one clip that's you have to mount on the rear of the supercharger, and it's incredibly difficult to do. It makes a difference. It just makes the install so clean and keeps everything from moving around, wiggling, shaking, or potentially cutting itself. So try to do every single solitary step as shown. This is quite the investment, and probably this thing is your baby, if I had to guess. Alright, first thing you're going to do is remove the fuse box lid, and it looks easier than it is, but you have to remove it. The second thing you're going to do is remove the nut at the positive wire for the fuse box, shown right there with the arrow. Now these next 5 steps only apply to the Forerunner. Push out the 2 small tabs shown with the arrows to release the wire housing and pull up on the wire. This was difficult, just to be honest, because it's tight quarters. After using everything I could think of, I ended up using 2 small picks. I stuck them in each tab and pushed the picks towards the engine block while I pulled up with needle nose pliers on the electrical connection itself. So 2 small picks right where those yellow arrows are, push towards the engine block and then pull up on the silver part going over the lug, and it'll come out. So here's the lug sticking up once you get it off the fuse box. And then what you're going to want to do is, you're going to unwrap the tape directly below that plastic bracket right there, housing the positive wire, because you're going to need to get another wire in there. This is what it looks like when you take the tape off and you have the plastic thing in your hand. You need to remove a small groove up top, up that I'm pointing to right now, and I used a Dremel to take that out. And this is what you want the finished product to look like. Cut that little tab out of your way, because you're going to piggyback 2 wires in there. Now go grab the provided wiring harness, get familiar with it, take a look at it, and then go find the fuses that they supply and install them. This is where they recommend that you mount the relay and fuse, and there's actually a factory mount hole that you can bolt right up to. With the M6 by 15 millimeter bolt that they give you, it goes right through the fender well, and then you use an M6 serrated nut on top, and I'll show you that to you. And this is where it's located in my truck with the S-Pod in the way, but I can still get to it. So I put some tape over the M6 serrated nut, and then you can see the bolt right inside right there. That's where I'm going to bolt up to. And here's a diagram right here showing you exactly what fuse they recommend that you jump off of. But my daylight running lights are already jumped off of that fuse, so I ended up just hardwiring it, and I'll show you how I did that. At the area where the red and yellow wires are for the intercooler relay harness, you will need to remove a section of the slit loom shown. Leave approximately 1 3/4 inches of a loom near the T intersection, and then tape them off as shown. Now, if you can get it, use the good cloth electrical tape, like the factory does. That's what I got. It's the way to go. I don't want to mess with this ever again. Not in my lifetime, at least. You know what I'm saying? Too much real estate is taken up to be messing around in there on the trail. Now, I didn't follow the manual. I didn't secure the relay and the fuse yet. I wanted to run the whole thing. I wanted to snake it through the truck first. Plus, I'm going to be hardwiring instead of tapping a fuse. I don't want my intercooler relying on a tapped fuse. I wanted a hard line, and that's what I did. The other reason for not attaching the relay and the fuse was you have to route the red and yellow wires from the intercooler relay harness behind the positive wire and then wrap with electrical tape in the area shown with an arrow. And having it pinned down like that would make it incredibly difficult. So I just waited till I was done doing everything, and then I mounted the relay and fuse on the fender well. And this is what you want the little plastic piece that you cut with a Dremel to look like when you're done. Then you're going to line these two up on the stud and bolt them back down. Now this step applies only to the FJ Cruiser. Route the yellow and red wires as shown and ensure that they are wrapped with electrical tape up to the point shown with the arrow. Told you I wouldn't forget about you guys. And this is what they want you to do, is to jump off of a fuse that's already in there, injector 10, which I didn't do, and then install the new fuse into the 10A injector fuse location, yellow arrow. The fuse location will be different for the FJ, so find it. Incorporate the eyelet connector from the red wire of the relay harness on top of the eyelet for the positive wires that was removed earlier, red arrow location, and press the assembly with the plastic housing back into place as you locate the two eyelets on the stud and secure with an OEM nut. Now, I don't like using fuse jumpers at all, so I just spliced into my daytime running light wire that was already there and hardwired it. Covered it up with heat shrink, good to go, just like I would with anything else. If you're already jumped onto that fuse because you have daytime running lights as well, you can still use the MAGNUSON supplied jumper and jump onto that fuse. I just didn't want to, and doing this, to me, at this point in the game, is easy enough. I tend to go overboard with things, but overboard in the middle of Moab when you're alone is good. And then finally, route the black wire from the relay harness from the front of the fuse box near the negative battery terminal. Remove the bolt on the ground wire for the left inner fender shown, red arrow. Incorporate the eyelet from the black wire of the relay harness with the good ground location from the last step and secure with the OEM bolt. And then put the fuse box lid back on, unless you're me. Now all you've got left to do is run the wire over to the intercooler pump located on the front of your vehicle. And I ran the wires behind my battery through the headlight. Easy peasy. There's tons of different ways to get it there. I did it the way where you actually wouldn't be able to see the wire when I was done. I wanted this to look factory, and it does. And again, the last thing you have to do is run that electrical loom that you just wired up and find a good way to plug it into the intercooler pump. Now my pump is vertical, yours should be horizontal unless you have a winch bumper. Just make sure the wire loom is protected. And fortunately, I have a rock guard right in front of mine. And then go back around and zip tie everything, secure everything. Just really go out of your way to make sure nothing is rubbing, nothing is touching, etc. Alright, so we're back to the manual once again because I did this differently. This entire installation is open to interpretation. It applies to your particular build. So in this build or install, I made plenty of brackets on my own, and I made plenty of rerouting of hoses, etc. on my own to best work with my setup. But this is for a stock 4Runner. You're going to secure the wire loom for the intercooler pump next to the hose shown using the provided cable ties in the locations shown with the red arrows. Easy peasy, right? Plug in the electrical connection at the hood latch. Connect the housing for the electrical connection from the last step behind the intercooler radiator into the slot shown with the arrow, and then follow the removal steps for the hood latch, the horns, and everything else in reverse order to reinstall them. Pretty easy. So now simply do everything from section 8 in reverse. Reinstall everything like section 8 showed you in reverse. You're basically putting everything back together because you are almost done, son. Now, because of my particular setup, I've already installed my radiator, but if you have a stock setup, you're going to be putting your radiator in now. And you're going to want to cut a 1/2 inch off the lower end of your lower radiator hose. Now, for the FJ Cruiser, you will need to remove 1.5 inches from this location. Also remove the plastic clamp shown with the arrow. This clamp will not be reused because it was found to come loose when relocated. Loosen the rubber reinforcement that the clamp is glued to in order to reposition it. Be careful not to damage the hose. The FJ Cruiser does not have the plastic hose clamp or rubber reinforcement. Now, I was able to reuse this clamp because I never removed it from my shroud. Now this one's for the 4Runner only. Cut 1 inch off the upper end of the lower radiator hose. Do not cut any hose from this location for the FJ Cruiser. If you upgraded your radiator like I did, double check that measure because I don't think you need to take an entire inch off. But double check on your own. Now, because I was able to reuse the white clamp that they tell you to remove, I didn't have to do this. But this step involving the installation of this cable is only for the 4Runner. Grab the 1/2 inch wide cable tie that's shown. This will replace the plastic clamp that was removed in the last step. This one right here. That little guy with the red arrow. You'll need to notch the fan shroud in 2 places for the large cable tie that will take the place of the white plastic clamp that was located in this area. These slots will be approximately a 1/2 inch long by an 1/8 inch wide. The first slot location is located in green here, located near the square cutout for the plastic mount on the fan shroud. Red arrow location. Another slot will be made in the next step, located on the side shown with the yellow arrow. It sounds complicated, but it's not. The green highlighted area in this photo shows the location for the slot. So basically just slot out the fan shroud right there so you can get the 1/2 inch wide cable tie in. They're putting an awful lot of extra words in here for no particular reason, in my opinion, at any rate. The next thing they're telling you is to remove the cardboard from the back of the radiator and replace the fan, shroud, fan, and radiator reservoir and hoses following the removal procedure in reverse. Do not install the lower radiator hose or radiator cover yet. So now you're basically just going to reinstall your fan and your shroud in reverse order, and just be very careful not to damage your radiator fins. Obviously, if you're installing a supercharger, you're already aware of that, but some people need to be reminded. If you keep a piece of cardboard in there, you can avoid damaging the radiator. I didn't have cardboard in there. I didn't damage my radiator. This is kind of old hat to me. Probably to you as well. But get that button back up and you're on your way. Run the 1/2 inch wide cable tie through the slot that you made 3 steps ago, and then have it come out through the other slot that was made. The cable tie is shown highlighted in green. You see it? There you go. Reconnect the lower radiator hose, ensuring the upper part of the hose is rotated to allow about a 1/4 inch clearance between the hose, pulley, and fan blade. Now this is important. I took my time making sure I got this right because the clearance between the new Supercharger pulleys and your lower radiator hose are very close. They're very tight. But I've run it for about 100 miles with 0 issues. Once you get the lower radiator hose where you're sure that it's clear from the pulley, position it so the flat portion near the slots that were cut out. Reposition the rubber reinforcement around the hose to coincide with the placement of the cable tie. So take the old rubber reinforcement and make sure your new 1/2 inch wide cable tie is on it. Don't crush the hose with the cable tie, and trim off the excess. You don't want to get caught up in anything that is spinning or moving. Okay, this is the last step for the installation. You're going to remove the 2 factory harness clamps that are on the firewall. It's a pain in the butt. I wish we had done this before we put the hoses in for the intercooler, but it is what it is. You're going to pull those 2 clamps out and then pull the harness forward so that it's out of the way of the Supercharger intercooler hoses. Once you manage to get these 2 clamps removed from the firewall, you're going to go to the provided kit and grab a tree zip tie. And you're going to be poking a hole in the plastic above where I'm poking around and supporting the wiring harness from the center. So you're basically pulling it out of the way. You're pulling out from behind to above the 2 intercooler hoses. You see what I'm saying? Now finally, install the upper radiator hose and secure it with the spring clamps. Ensure that the drain plug for the radiator is closed, and it says to filter the saved coolant, but I used all new coolant because why wouldn't you? You know what I'm saying? It's a brand new Supercharger, it's a brand new radiator, it's a brand new intercooler, and MAGNUSON warns you to use Toyota Red because the intercooler is susceptible to corrosion if you don't. So do that. Now fill her up all the way to the top. Squeeze your hoses. You know how to purge this whole thing. I got a special air purger for this to set up, but I didn't need it. I just purged it by hand. All was well. Fill up your primary cooling system because now you got a secondary intercooler. How badass is that? Fill up your radiator, top it off, etc. Now you go around and install the MAGNUSON provided stickers, the one for super unleaded on your gas tank and the one for the belt routing on your hood, just like the factory would. Now reconnect your battery and fill the intercooler reservoir with a Toyota approved coolant mixture until it is full. I used about 3 liters or 3.5 quarts. Have someone else turn your ignition to the accessory mode to trigger the pump. Don't start the truck yet. This will circulate the fluid. Once the reservoir drains, turn the ignition off and fill it again. Do not allow the reservoir to run dry. And now check for fluid leaks. Check for clearance on your bottom radiator hose to the pulleys. You should have about a 1/4 inch of clearance there. And also check for fuel leaks at this time. Repeat until full circulation is achieved with a full reservoir. Fluid level should be just under the top barb, and then put the cover on. And then finally, start her up. Okay, once your engine is cooled down, check the level of the radiator reservoir and the intercooler reservoir. And if coolant is necessary, add coolant if necessary. Reinstall the radiator cover and the radiator grill on the FJ Cruiser only. Now test drive the vehicle for the first few miles under normal conditions. Don't be going full skinny pedal. Check for any unusual sounds, vibrations, or engine misfires. The supercharger is going to whine, and you know that. This is normal. After the initial test, let the engine cool down and recheck coolant levels and inspect for leaks. After the initial drive, gradually work the vehicle to wide open throttle runs. Listen for any engine detonation or pinging. If you get any of that, let up on the throttle immediately. Most times pinging is caused by low octane gas or bad gas. Premium 91 octane is required. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. You have installed a MAGNUSON supercharger in your 5th gen Toyota. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment below, and I will try to return the favor. I am out.